What's up guys, my name is Fabrizio Halorena and today we're going to talk about the hamstrings. I'm going to show you 5 different exercises. 3 knee flexion exercises and 2 proximal exercises. But before we get into the exercises, let's talk about what the hamstring is consisted of. It consists of the Biceps Femoris, the Semitendinosus, and the Semimembranosus. So the attachment points for the hamstring muscles is the ischial tuberosity, which is a bony prominence on the posterior side of the pelvis. Now that we're familiarized with the hamstring, let's get into the workouts. The first exercise we're going to talk about is the leg curl. The leg curl is an exercise that primarily focuses on the hamstrings. To perform it, you're going to be in a prone position on the leg curl machine with your legs hooked under the padded bar. During the leg curl, the hamstrings contract to flex the knee joints against resistance, bringing the lower part of the leg towards the buttocks. Alright, now I'm going to show you an example of how to perform the leg curl. You're going to get in a prone position on the leg curl machine with your legs hooked under the padded bar. Flex the knee joint against resistance, working to bring the lower leg towards the buttocks. Now that I showed you the leg curl, we can proceed to the RDL. The RDL, or the Romanian deadlift, is a compound exercise that targets the posterior chain, which includes the hamstring, glutes, and the erector spinae. During the RDL, the hip joint is extended and the spine is maintained in a neutral position. The hamstrings and the glutes both work together to perform hip extension, while the erector spinae muscles stabilize the spine during the movement. And here's an example of how it would look like. Stand with your feet hip-width apart, holding a dumbbell in each hand. Keep your chest up, shoulders back, and maintain a slight bend in your knees. Lower the dumbbell along the front of your legs, maintaining a slight bend in your knees. Feel the stretch and come back up. Moving on to the Nordic hamstring curl. This is an eccentric exercise that primarily focuses on the hamstrings. During this exercise, the hamstrings are actively lengthening to control the descent of the body, especially during the lowering phase where the body is moving towards the ground. This places significant demand on the eccentric strength of the hamstrings. Here's an example of how to do it. For this exercise, find something to hold your feet. You will then slowly lean forward up until you can no more and drop to the floor. Push back up and start again. This targets the hamstrings significantly. Now we're going to move on to the hip thrust. I know, the hip thrust is usually performed by girls, but come on, guys should do it too. The hip thrust primarily targets the glute maximus, but it also involves the hamstring muscles to a certain extent, especially during the hip extension phase. This is how it looks like. Start by having your spine resting on the padded bar and your knees bent, feet hip-width apart. Then raise your hips, squeezing your glutes at the top. Hold for a little and then drop again. Moving on to the glute bridge. Just like the hip thrust, the glute bridge primarily targets the glute maximus, emphasizing hip extension. It also involves the hamstrings to a certain extent during the hip extension phase. Here's a video on how to do it. Lie on your back on a comfortable surface. Bend your knees and place your feet on the ground hip-width apart. Your feet should be close enough that you can touch them with your fingertips. Tilt your pelvis slightly forward, ensuring your lower back stays on the mat. Lift your thighs and upper body to form a straight line. Your body should resemble a bridge shape. At the top, squeeze your glutes and make sure your hips are fully extended.